Good day and welcome again to the Word of Life broadcast with Pastor T. I will be talking today about how you can discover and fulfill your purpose here on earth. How you can discover and you can fulfill your purpose here on earth. Last time I talked about how you can connect your purpose. I want to look at the characteristics. What are the characteristics you should look out for when you want to identify to see whether you're functioning within your purpose? We're going to read from the Bible in Galatians chapter 2, verse 9. I read, when James, Peter, and John, who seemed to be the leaders, recognized that God had given me this special gift, they accepted me and Barnabas and agreed to be our partners. They agreed that we walked amongst the non-Jewish people and they amongst the Jewish people. This story looks like a football scenario. When England plays, sometimes you have the England managers when football Premier League clubs play, sometimes the England manager goes to the stand and then he looks at the crowd, at some young talent, English talent, to see whether they can demonstrate that they have the gifting to play in the English national team. The same when there is a scout, there are football scouts that go around the world looking for new talents to recruit into the top clubs in Europe, so that they can keep on providing this raw talent to keep to that standard that is expected in the Premier League and other clubs in Europe. The same Peter, James, and John were leaders in the church, and they were looking at the church to identify people who had a calling, a gifting to fit a specific area. And then when they looked at Paul and Barnabas, they realized that, hey, these two guys had a massive passion for non-Jewish people, and they had a gift to be able to communicate with these people such that the people can understand them clearly and the people can relate to what they are saying. And so they welcomed these people and then they commissioned them to go and do what God has called them to do. Just like if the England manager goes to look around in a Premier League match and he sees a raw English talent, he will give that person a call and welcome them into the English national team. So the same thing happened here. They welcomed Paul and Barnabas and they said, you know what, this is what we see God is calling you into, and that is where you can function. So they commissioned them into that. So I want to look at today, how can you identify what God has called you to do? What are the characteristics you should look out for? The first thing you should look out for is that you will feel it in your spirit. God will confirm it to you. God can confirm it to you by speaking to you directly. He spoke to Jeremiah and he said, Jeremiah, when I created you in your mother's womb, I called you to be a prophet to the nations. He revealed it by revelation to Joseph. Joseph had dreams twice, confirming the same thing, that he was going to be a ruler over nations, and he was going to rule over his father, rule over his family, his brothers, and rule over a whole nation. Joseph, that was confirmed to him. Timothy was confirmed by prophecy. I don't mean that don't just go around looking for prophecies, because if you go around looking for prophecies, you can get the wrong things. The prophecy must confirm what is already in your spirit. You must have some kind of confirmation saying that that is what God has called you into that area. So you must have a genuine conviction in your heart. Paul also, God revealed to him that he had been called to preach the gospel. So there are different things that God has called different people to do, but God will reveal it to you. So the second thing is you will have a passion for that. This is a key indicator. You will have a passion for that thing. Jeremiah said, I have such a passion in my spirit. Even when I refuse to speak, I cannot hold it because it is burning in my bones. That is what he says in Jeremiah chapter 20 verse 9. He says, your word was in my spirit like a fire. It was burning in my bone. Most of these sports stars you see who have achieved, they have a passion for what they do. Michael Jordan failed so many times, but what kept him going? Because there was a passion in his heart for basketball. He had a passion for it. If he never had a passion for it, he would have given up. That passion will enable you to pay the sacrifices that enable you to excel in that thing that God has called you to do. Mo Farah of Liverpool had to travel. It says that he had to travel 3 hours to where he was doing training and 3 hours back every day. So 6 hours he was on the road to go and train, just because he had a dream to become a footballer. What kept him going? Because there was a passion in his soul for that thing. In the same way Andy Murray used to train for about 4 hours a day, many other stars had to train for such a long time. So you have a passion in your spirit for that thing. You have a passion. If you want to if God has called you to be a nurse, you have a passion for people who are suffering, people who need, you want to help them. So you have a passion for that thing. The next thing is, when you function in that area, you will be fulfilled. When you function in the area in which you've been called, you will find fulfillment. Paul said this. He said when he was about to die, he said, I've done what God told me to do here on earth. I've run the race, I've fulfilled my calling. It says that in 2 Timothy chapter 4, from verse 7 to 8, it says, I have done what God put me. He was dying a fulfilled person. Why? Because he did what God called him to do, even though he did it later on in his life. So when you function in that area, you'll be fulfilled. You'll be happy. If God has called you to be a teacher, when you work as a teacher, you'll be happy. If God has called you to be a footballer, you'll be happy with it. How many times have we heard of footballers who decide even to leave clubs and take a pay cut just to go to another club where they can play week after week? Because there is something bubbling in them. They love playing the football more than even the money. Yes, they have the money already, but the passion to play, they want to do something they enjoy, and they enjoy playing football, not just the money. And so you will enjoy that thing if you have been called into it. You feel fulfilled when you function in that area. The next characteristic is that people will see it. If you have been called to be a comedian, people will know that, you will realize that you're funny. You don't need to fake it. People will see it. If you're a good footballer, people will be able to identify it. When the scouts go out to look for young talents, you can't fake it. You can fake it 1 or 2 days, but after that, it's going to die out. And so people will be able to see it. They will be able to identify that talent. There was in 1 Kings chapter 7, verse 14, the Bible says that Solomon identified the leadership qualities that were in Jeroboam, and he set him to be rulers over the people, a ruler over the people. Solomon identified those qualities. And in the beginning of this teaching, I said that James, Peter, and the other leaders, they identified the leadership qualities in Paul and in Barnabas. The qualities that Paul and Barnabas had, and the passion they had for the non-Jewish people. And they when they discovered that, they commissioned them to do that job. So people will see it. That is one of the characteristics when you function in that area. You also have a natural talent or skill. That means you're not going to struggle to be what God has called you to be. You have a natural talent or skill given to you by God. You will realize it yourself. I find it, somebody who has been called to be a computer programmer, you find it very easy to program things. You will learn it very easy. That takes me to the next point. That natural talent will lead you to be able to learn faster. If somebody says they have been called to be a footballer of the caliber of Lionel Messi, and they are putting in the training, they are putting in they have the passion for it, yet they don't develop, then you have not been called into that area. If you want to be Usain Bolt, and you say, no, I'm going to give myself all the training, I have a passion for this thing, yet you are not making any progress year after year after year, you need to go back and revise whether God has called you into that area. Because that is, you need a natural talent first of all, and then you will be able to develop faster than others who are subjected to the same training than as yourself. When Daniel was selected with his group, they were selected because of their natural ability that the rulers could see. But they developed faster than others because they had a better talent than the other people. Now, the last characteristics you should look out for is that when you have been called in a specific area, when you function in that area, people's lives will be impacted. There will be impact. You can't say you've been called to be a footballer and then you're always poorly playing. You can't say you've been called to be a preacher, but when you preach, there is no impact. You can't say that you've been called to be an administrator and then there is no result out of what you're doing. When you've been called in an area, there will be results. There will be impact. When you function within that capacity, people will be blessed. People will be transformed. You will get results out of it. When Jesus began to preach, they said of Jesus, they said, he is different from the Pharisees. He speaks with authority. His word have impact on people's lives. Why? Because that is what he was placed on earth to do. When you are doing what you are placed on earth to do, people will be blessed. People will be transformed. You will get results in what you're doing. So, my brother, my sister, God has placed each one of us here to fulfill a specific purpose. There are areas God has purpose for us to function in. We might have jobs and careers along the way. I want to define that very clearly. There is a difference between your job, your career, and your purpose. Joseph is an example. Joseph was a shepherd boy, and then he became a slave. He became a servant in Potiphar's house. He became a prisoner, and then he became what God had called him to be, the prime minister of Egypt, as God revealed to him when he was a child. But so the fact that God has said that you're going to be a surgeon, that God has said you're going to be the prime minister, that God has said you're going to be an administrator, that God has said you're going to be a businessman, a top-class businessman, that God has said you're going to be a finance analyst, that God has said you're going to be a nurse or a doctor or whatsoever. It doesn't mean that you're not going to work on Tesco's till. It doesn't mean that you're not going to work in McDonald's somehow. It doesn't mean that you're not going to do one menial job or the other as a student. You will do those jobs on your way to become what God has called you to be. So don't underestimate that small beginnings. Just stick into that. Give your talent, give your time to it. And then when it's time to move on to what God has called you to be. So I pray that God will help you to discover what he has placed you here on earth to do. Use this criteria, test yourself to find out what God has called you here to do. And may you fulfill that destiny in the name of Jesus. Pray with me this morning. God, I pray, may whosoever is listening to me discover what you have called them to do, and may they fulfill it to the glory of your name. May God bless you. This is Pastor T. I hope to see you again tomorrow. God bless you.